Discover the amazing transformation of a beggar. How one mindset shift changed his life forever. Jack stood on the cracked pavement of Michigan Avenue, the weight of despair tugging at his shoulders like an anchor sinking into the depths of the Chicago River. Once a revered architect, he was now just another shadow wandering the city, hands roughened by the toil of collecting discarded cans, and a heart heavy with the loss of his beloved wife. Laughter and bright chatter surrounded him as families strolled past. Each smile reminded him of the warmth he once embraced. Now he only felt the chill of isolation. Did they know his story? Did they recognize him as the artist who had shaped the skyline now gleaming golden in the fading sun? He questioned whether anyone, friends or strangers, would notice if he vanished completely. Memories flooded his mind, vibrant blueprints and ambitious designs overshadowed by grief. Every sunset became an elegy for the life he had dreamed of building, and the present seemed more like a punishment than a life worth living. As he stood in anguish, contemplating his existence, Mr. Thompson approached a familiar figure from his past. The retired architect's face lit up with recognition, a spark of hope igniting within him. "Jack," he greeted, his voice warm yet tinged with concern. "I've been looking for you." But Jack could only avert his gaze, feeling both gratitude and shame. He remembered how Thompson encouraged his talent, how he had nurtured Jack's passion, and how Jack had let it slip through his fingers like sand. "Why are you here?" Jack's voice was thick with uncertainty, each syllable a reminder of his perceived failure. Yet, Mr. Thompson persisted, his old, gentle hands resting on Jack's shoulder. "I see the architect still inside you, buried beneath the hurt. You need to sketch again. Start slow. Just a part of your skyline, a drawing of hope." Internal conflict surged within Jack. There was a flicker of desire to reclaim his identity, but each time he saw a pencil, he felt the dread of judgment lingering like a specter. What if he failed again? What if the brilliance he once embodied was truly lost? Even the whispers of those who once admired his work echoed in the back of his mind, relentless and condemning. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jack began to tentatively sketch, each line breathed life into him, a sense of purpose stirring his tired soul. Yet, whispers of doubt cascaded around him. Former colleagues dismissed his dreams, labeling him a failure unworthy of the architect's label. Their disdain made him question his worth, forced him to confront the agonizing truth of his situation. Would he ever escape the label of a beggar? How could he rise up when society had already cast him aside? A glance around the art show where his work hung created a tension that twisted in his chest. The admiration of onlookers was intoxicating, yet one harsh comment from a former associate sent his heart plummeting. In that crowded space bursting with possibilities, he hesitated, caught between the praise he sought and the harsh reality he lived. Jack faced his true challenge. Could he redefine success on his own terms, or was he bound by a judgment that clung to him like a second skin? With each breath, he felt the weight of expectation pressing down, forcing him into a claustrophobic despair. As he stood on the precipice of self-rediscovery, he wondered, would he let the voices of the past drown him, or would he fight for the architect he still believed existed within? The answer was just out of reach, a question lingering on the brink of resolution. Jack's heart raced as he stepped away from the swirl of whispers and laughter filling the gallery. Beneath the bright lights and shimmering conversations, a tempest churned within him. Each compliment was a siren call, urging him to embrace his passion. Yet the unkind words of his past echoed like a dissonant chorus in his mind. The warmth of appreciation felt foreign, a stark contrast to the cold desolation that had settled in his life, and he couldn't reconcile the two. He wandered outside, the chill of the evening air biting at his skin, and found himself staring at the reflections of the city around him. The towering buildings he once sketched with pride now loomed overhead like judge and jury. Every window became a lens into his failures. With his hands shoved deep into his pockets, he could almost feel the weight of his former self pressing down on him. A constant reminder of the architect he once aspired to be. Could he really sketch again? That lingering question hovered in his thoughts like a wisp of smoke, tantalizing yet elusive. Mr. Thompson's words rang in his ears, and he recalled the days spent with him, learning not just about architecture, but about belief in oneself. Jack knew that belief had been eroded over time, worn down by incessant judgment and the relentless tide of despair. A sudden flash of clarity hit him. Perhaps the act of drawing wasn't merely a professional endeavor. It was a lifeline, a means of reclaiming himself against a backdrop of doubt. Driven by this realization, he found a small cafe where he could sketch in peace, hoping to unearth those fragments of inspiration buried deep within him. Settling into a corner with a pencil and a tattered notebook, Jack felt the familiar pulse of creativity, a current that surged through him as the tip of the pencil brushed against the white page. He hesitated at first, each tentative stroke born from fear rather than confidence. The echoes of past rejections manifested in his hand's trembling movements, but with each curve he drew, he began to combat that fear. The lines transformed, and as they did, so did he. A skyline emerged, a melding of memory and aspiration. Each building was a nod to his former self, but also a testament to his resilience. Hours slipped by unnoticed as he lost himself in this newly kindled energy. He began to see his sketches as a dialogue with his pain, a dialogue that had been silenced for far too long. Some were perfect, capturing not just structures but the souls he had infused into them, while others bore scars of uncertainty. But that was okay. Each imperfection was part of the journey. But as the city's nightlife began to pulse around him, doubts returned, whispering of the merciless critics that lurked in the corners of his mind. They clawed at his newfound courage, reminding him that a single misstep could undo everything he was trying to rebuild. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to shut out the voices. He hadn't drawn just buildings. He had sketched a version of himself, and he couldn't let it fade away. As he leaned back, staring at the collection before him, a flicker of resolve ignited. He wasn't just reclaiming art. He was redefining success, shifting the narrative from failure to persistence. Perhaps this was a beginning, a pathway not just back to architecture but toward a renewed sense of identity. An impulse surged within him to share his work, to expose himself to criticism and potential rejection. The thought scared him, but buried deeper was the thrilling possibility of acceptance, a chance to stand again among his peers, not as the beggar but as the architect he had fought to become. The time had come to face the pivotal moment he had long avoided. Jack's heart raced with uncertainty, but he took a breath. Would he allow himself to take that next step, or would he retreat again into the shadows? The decision hung heavily, echoing around him like the distant sounds of the bustling city. As the brisk evening air nipped at his skin, Jack sat for a moment longer, absorbing the reality of his artistic sanctuary and the chaotic hum of life beyond the cafe's windows. With the horizon of his ambition laid bare before him in ink and graphite, he considered his next move. A voice in his mind, one that had once screamed self-doubt, was now a hesitant whisper. What if he showed his sketches? What if he let people see the work born from his struggle? He rose from his seat, the decision settling in his chest like a weight and a relief all at once. Outside, the glow of street lamps illuminated pathways leading in countless directions. Each one beckoned him, but there was one path he felt compelled to follow, the one back toward the gallery. The idea of stepping back into that space, where echoes of past glories mingled with his current insecurities, set his heart pounding. He navigated through bustling streets, each step a mix of dread and exhilaration. He rehearsed in his mind, running through phrases of introduction and defense against the possible storm of critiques. The familiar rhythm of second-guessing attempted to drown out the steady pulse of determination he had nurtured in the cafe. He arrived at the gallery, its doors standing like a portal to either despair or opportunity. The heart of his creative past was behind those walls, but he had to confront more than merely art. He had to confront his own reflection. As he pushed the door open, the sounds of revelry washed over him. He spotted familiar faces among the crowd, their laughter echoing like distant notes of a symphony, some beautiful, others dissonant. He felt a rush of anxiety as he considered the possibility of presenting himself and his sketches. His stomach twisted into knots, but with every breath, he reminded himself of the transformative energy that had surged through him during his sketching. Drawing in a steadying breath, Jack confronted the inner critic that had taunted him for so long. Was he truly ready to be vulnerable? This time, he centered himself on the purpose of his journey, not validation, but connection. Genuine connection could only come from vulnerability. If he could lay bare his artistic scars, perhaps they could serve as a narrative of resilience for others as well. He locked eyes with a group of artists and critics across the room. They were examining the works on display, dissecting forms and visions with their eager analyses. Fueled by this surge of conviction, Jack took a few tentative steps toward them. The onlookers turned as he approached, their expressions shifting from admiration at the paintings before them to curiosity about the newcomer stepping into their circle. "Excuse me," he started, his voice surprisingly steady amidst the cacophony. "I'd like to share some of my sketches. They're not part of this collection, but they represent where I've been and where I hope to go." A mixture of surprise and interest reached their faces. The small group shifted, opening a space for him. Jack felt a rush of warmth spread through him as he revealed the tightly clasped notebook from under his arm, each page laden with his personal journey and visions. He felt a strange blend of fear and exhilaration, as if he both stood on the brink of triumph and the precipice of failure. With each page he turned, deeper breaths shuddered through him. He laid bare the blueprints of his soul alongside the artistic architecture he had crafted during the sanctuary of his cafe. Laughter turned to admiration, a soft murmur coursing through the group as they examined the raw energy and passion captured in his sketches. But even as their responses filled him with encouragement, the shadows of skepticism hovered at the edges of his thoughts. Could his work withstand criticism? Were they seeing his truth, or merely a reflection of their preconceived notions? He lost himself momentarily in the shifting tides of acceptance and doubt. With the rising excitement, a singular thought punctured the haze. The moment of truth had arrived. Would his vulnerability yield the acceptance he yearned for, or would it expose him to rejection anew? Just as he steadied himself for their verdict, the sharp, unexpected voice of a seasoned critic, a name that sent shivers through his spine, cut through the crowd. "What makes your art different from why any of us are truly here?" Jack's breath caught, and every heartbeat echoed the question. Would this confrontation challenge his newfound resolve, or was it an opportunity to cement it? As he met the critic's piercing gaze, determination surged within him. Defining his own narrative would no longer remain in the shadows. His response would determine everything. Jack felt the weight of the critic's gaze press down on him, raw and unyielding. What was art if not an exploration of the self, a mirror held up to the world? He searched for the right words, the ones that would not only answer the critic but also validate his journey thus far. "Art," he began, voice steady yet trembling at the edges, "is more than just aesthetics. It's a conversation, an invitation for connection. My sketches reflect my struggles and triumphs, the journey of someone who stood on the edge and decided to step forward." For a split second, silence enveloped the group. Jack's heart raced, the bare vulnerability of his declaration hanging in the air like a whisper of hope. What he craved most was the understanding that passion could be born out of pain. The critic, however, simply arched an eyebrow, a clear challenge in his response. "But isn't that just a reflection of your own insecurity? Every artist here struggles. Why should we invest our time in your story?" The words stung, lancing through Jack's determination. He fought against the sharp edge of doubt that threatened to drag him down. This was the defining moment where he could either retreat into the shadows or step boldly into the spotlight. Drawing on the energy of the crowd that had gathered, he felt the heat of the moment transform into something fierce. because he said, voice growing clearer, every story is different. My insecurities have shaped me, and if they resonate with even one person, then they're value. It's about connection. We can learn from one another. He watched as the critic's skeptical posture softened. This was more than just art. This was a breaking of barriers, the chance to reclaim his narrative. Maybe vulnerability was not a weakness but a bridge to authentic exchange. The group began to lean closer, intrigue flickering behind their analytical eyes. Encouraged by the gentle nods from his audience, Jack continued, revealing more of himself beyond the sketches, the loneliness that had seeped into his work, the moments where despair challenged artistry, and the thrill of rebirth when he finally allowed creativity to flow unbounded. He linked each revelation with an image from his sketches, each page serving as a chapter of his life. As he flipped through the pages, he sensed the crowd shifting from mere spectators to engaged listeners, their expressions reflecting empathy rather than criticism. The unanticipated warmth pushed back against the nipping cold of doubt that had once paralyzed him. Yet, the critic's voice returned, subtle but insistent. But can you sustain this authenticity? Can you create art that transcends personal experience? Or will it be limited to your own narrative? This was not merely a query. It was the essence of artistry itself, pushing him toward a profound self-assessment. Jack's mind raced. Could this interrogation actually open a door? Could it be the key that unlocked his deeper artistic potential, challenging him to view his work not simply as a reflection of himself but as a vital part of a larger dialogue? Determined, Jack squared his shoulders. Art is constantly evolving. I want to grow, to expand my perspective. My sketches are just a starting point. I'm inviting others. My experience is just one layer in 1,000 more, waiting to be discovered. Every response illuminated pathways within him, revealing not only the fear he had carried, but the immense potential to shape his art further. As the crowd buzzed with murmurs of approval and debate, Jack felt a burgeoning excitement flutter within him. He hadn't just defended his sketches. He had opened the door to a profound conversation about art, humanity, and the interconnectedness of experiences. But what he didn't realize was the whisper of his own unresolved anxiety beckoning him from within. Was he truly prepared for the next leap, the challenge to push beyond his personal narratives into themes that might truly resonate with the world? Just as the conversations began to swirl around him, Jack knew one thing. He stood at the precipice of both opportunity and fear. As he considered his next steps, he pondered the advice of artists he had admired from afar. It was time to explore beyond himself. What would he uncover when he dared to push those boundaries, when he stepped beyond the safety of his past? He felt the thrill of possibility saturate the air, demanding that he embrace the uncertainty ahead. The moment of truth was no longer just about answering the critic. It was about embarking on a deeper, transformative journey that awaited him. Would he dive into the unknown, or retreat into the familiar confines of his own fears? The question hovered in his mind as the next chapter of his artistic life beckoned just beyond the horizon. As the murmurs of conversation swirled around Jack, he felt a growing sense of urgency clawing at him. The critic had posed a question with undeniable weight, one that pressed against his consciousness like a heavy stone. Could he truly step beyond his own story? Did he have the courage to weave the narratives of others into his artistic tapestry? The crowd's interest lingered, a shimmering thread connecting Jack to their expectations. His heart pounded with anticipation. Unsure where to go next, he glanced at his sketches, the tangible proof of his struggles and truths. Each drawing encapsulated a fragment of his being, yet he understood the quest for growth would not be found in isolation. It was time to reach out. Taking a deep breath, he nodded to the audience. I realize that my journey is but one piece of a grander mosaic. It's not enough to simply reflect upon myself. I need to invite influence from the experiences of those around me. As the crowd quieted in interest, Jack felt a shift within him. The fear that had once tethered him to his own narrative began to dissolve, replaced by a burgeoning curiosity about the stories of others, a hunger to understand the fabric of their lives and emotions. He decided then to explore the art of collaboration, seeking out those whose experiences could shape his work. After the gathering, Jack made a list of local artists, community members, and even strangers whose lives might resonate with the themes he wished to explore. Days passed as he met with the diverse characters inhabiting his city. A single mother who poured her dreams into painting, an elderly veteran whose stories spilled forth like watercolors across canvas, and a young poet whose words danced like fireflies in the twilight. Initially, these encounters felt vulnerable, like stepping into uncharted territory. Jack paused during silent moments, feeling the tender thread of connection. His tendency to articulate pain through personal experience now begged the question: what could he reveal through the lens of others? Gradually, those initial hesitations transformed into a lavish inspiration. Joint discussions sparked creativity. Stories unfolded between them, rich with shared humanity. Jack began to apply their narratives to his art, each sketch morphing into a multilayered reflection of not only himself but also the lives shaping his environment. However, the journey was not without its hurdles. The deeper he delved, the more he resisted the shadows of his own insecurities, those haunting thoughts whispering that he might not be sufficient. Was he capable of representing their stories authentically? The fear took root again, but this time, Jack found new strength in knowing he was not alone. Each artist he met had faced their doubts, their fears, and they collectively forged connections that transformed their vulnerabilities into resilience. Weeks turned into months, and Jack's collection began to take on a life of its own. An amalgamation of voices juxtaposed against one another, a visual narrative of struggle, healing, and communal strength. With every completed piece, he discovered a profound truth. Authenticity thrived not in isolation but within shared experiences. Yet, as he prepared for his upcoming exhibition, where these new creations would be unveiled, doubt crept into his thoughts once more. Could he avoid overwhelming his audience with voices that were not his own? How would they react to this candid portrayal of collective pain and triumph? Deep inside, he understood that this work was no longer merely an exploration of his narrative. It was an invitation for others to recognize their own stories within his art. The weight of sharing their truth weighed heavily on him, but he learned to navigate the complexities, recognizing the beauty that lay in the clashing emotions of joy, sorrow, and hope. As Jack stood before his blended canvas, his heart thrummed with anticipation. Everything had been leading to this moment, an intersection of self and community, a revelation of mutual responsibility in the act of storytelling. How would his audience respond once they encountered this tapestry of intertwined lives? Each second stretched and tightened, yet the uncertain promise of vulnerability surged through him again, urging him forward. What awaited him at the exhibition could either be a convergence of acceptance or an unforeseen crossroads of judgment. The truth loomed just out of reach, waiting to reveal itself as Jack prepared for the culmination of his journey. Would he embrace the outcomes, regardless of what rose from that canvas of shared humanity? The moment held its breath, and so did he, propelled into the unknown, poised on the edge of revelation. As the day of the exhibition approached, Jack's anxiety escalated. Each passing hour felt like a countdown to judgment, and he grappled with a tempest of emotions, a cocktail of pride and dread that twisted in his gut. His gallery loomed like a storm cloud, promising a deluge of scrutiny. What if the stories he had woven through his art failed to resonate? What if they were dismissed as mere illustrations rather than profound connections? In an attempt to manage his spiraling thoughts, Jack frequented the studio, immersing himself in the details of his work. Each brushstroke became a meditation, yet each completion was accompanied by an unsettling whisper that questioned his aptitude. He meticulously arranged the pieces, creating a visual narrative he hoped would speak volumes. Yet deeper self-doubt clawed at him. At times, he caught himself lost in reverie, picturing the faces of those who had shared their truths with him. Would they be proud? Would they see their voices reflected authentically? Or would they feel misrepresented, their narratives reduced to mere artistic embellishments? During one late night at the studio, while he continued to adjust the lighting on his pieces, Jack noticed a flicker of movement in the corner. A figure emerged from the shadows of the street outside, a homeless man, eyes bright yet haunted, observing the gallery's gleaming facade. Jack felt compelled to open the door. It was fateful, an impulse that propelled him into a conversation that would change everything. "Beautiful place you got here," the man said, his voice gravelly but warm. Jack smiled politely. "Thanks. I hope to share some stories through my work." "Stories?" the man echoed, and a glimmer of curiosity crossed his face. "Every person's got one, don't they?" That simple statement struck Jack. Every person had a story, but the weight of those stories rested on a fragile soul. Suddenly, the faces of the single mother, the veteran, and the poet filled his mind again. But so did questions that made his stomach churn. How accountable was he to these narratives? Did he have the right to share their struggles and triumphs in such a public way? "What's your story?" Jack asked, the words tumbling out. The man hesitated, drawing in a breath like he hadn't spoken to anyone in a long time. "My life's a mess," he finally replied, the vulnerability in his voice palpable. "But it's honest. I don't shy from it." Jack felt a spark, igniting the latent inspiration simmering within him. Here was a man with layers and complexities begging to be explored. "Can I draw you? Would you share your story with me through art?" The man, taken aback, studied Jack closely. He could see the sincerity in those earnest eyes and the determination to honor his experiences. "Yeah, I'm not ashamed. Just remember it's not all pretty," he cautioned. A flicker of resolve ignited within Jack. "I want the truth." As the man shared his narrative, Jack was swept away by the rawness and unvarnished nature of his words. Every detail painted a broader picture in Jack's mind, feeding the hunger for authenticity that had emerged amidst the crowd's expectations. It was like rediscovering a forgotten part of himself, an intellectual and emotional journey back to what art was truly about. In that moment, a significant shift occurred within Jack. He realized he wasn't just a curator of stories. He was a vessel for their humanity. The fear that had paralyzed him melted away into purpose, reigniting his artistic drive to breathe life into shared pain and joy. As dawn broke that morning, Jack found himself newly invigorated, filled with a sense of clarity about the exhibition. He would present the narratives not as detached representations but as a tribute to the strength found in authenticity. Now, as Jack rehearsed the speech he would deliver at the exhibition, he sensed the pulse of collaboration coursing through him. The looming shadows of doubt had transformed into a tapestry of resolve. And yet, he couldn't shake a growing unease. The confrontation with that particular audience demanded everything he had prepared, and more. Could he truly encapsulate the depth of their experiences without losing his own identity in the process? The answer lingered, unanswered but pressing, as the hour approached. Embracing his role seemed inevitable, yet the path ahead was obscured, and he felt the weight of expectation heavy on his shoulders. Would this be the moment of transformative connection he desperately sought, or a confrontation with his deepest fear of failure? That question haunted him, the unyielding anticipation of the opening night looming ever closer. Jack stepped onto the polished floor of the gallery, the sense of paint and fresh wood mingling in the air. The soft glow of spotlights illuminated the meticulously arranged pieces that told stories bathed in struggles and triumphs. But beneath the veneer of calm, his heart raced with uncertainty, pumping the same anxiety that had threatened to paralyze him just days prior. He paused, surveying the audience filtering through the door. A mix of familiar faces and strangers with curious smiles aimed their gazes at the art. Each interaction buzzed with expectation, and he felt as though he were standing on the precipice of something monumental, while doubt reverberated like a persistent whisper in his ear. "I can't mess this up," he muttered under his breath, a recurrence of the mantra he chanted in solitude. As conversations began to hum, his thoughts spiraled. Would the vulnerability of his subjects resonate, or would critics dismiss the narratives as sentimental theatrics? The stakes felt impossibly high. His first visitor, a local artist named Elena, approached with a keen interest. "Your pieces are striking, Jack." The emotions leap right off the canvas. "What drove you to capture these stories?" The question sliced through his turmoil, steering him into focus. This was it. He could articulate not just the intent behind the art, but the very humanity it aimed to honor. Yet a flicker of fear threatened to extinguish his burgeoning clarity. I wanted to delve deep into the struggles of real people. Each narrative carries weight, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. What's the risk for you in sharing those stories? She probed, her curiosity penetrating. Jack swallowed hard, the truth wrestling within him. I fear misrepresentation. Art is subjective, and I dread altering or diluting their essence with my vision. Elena nodded, processing his honesty. But isn't that part of sharing the journey? To risk your interpretation of their truth? For a moment, Jack hesitated, considering her words. Perhaps she was right, art was a dialogue, not a monologue. The risk was intertwined with the reward. Embracing that vulnerability, he took a deep breath and recounted the story of the homeless man he had met, striking a chord in his mind, a tale layered with fortitude amid raw honesty. As Jack narrated, he felt the audience lean closer, captivated by the realness of his witness to suffering and resilience. Their eyes sparkled with empathy, and something shifted within him. He became not merely the artist but the facilitator of connection and interpreter of heartbreak and brilliance. Minutes passed as Jack mingled with the guests, each recitation fueling his understanding. They didn't just relate to the visuals. They felt shifted by the narratives, their breaths hitching when he shared intimate revelations from the subjects. The weight of their stories became alive through his passion, and Jack finally recognized the power of vulnerability, both his and theirs. Then, as he prepared to engage a new face in the growing crowd, a familiar figure caught his eye. It was the homeless man, standing just outside the doorway and gazing at the exhibit with a mix of awe and trepidation. Jack's heartbeat quickened. He hadn't anticipated that the man would come, let alone witness everything he had poured himself into. Suddenly, the dawn of dread crept in again. What if the man felt betrayed by Jack's interpretation? What if he believed that his truth hadn't been honored? Jack had poured his soul into the work, but reality burned with uncertainties. Adjusted confidence faltered as Jack realized this encounter would define everything. The confrontation with his deepest fear rested before him. He took a step toward the man, and as their eyes locked, he grappled with a consuming question. Could he confront the potential backlash of his choices without losing the possibility of connection that had sparked his artistic journey? The exhibition hall buzzed with activity around him, but it felt miles away, leading Jack to stand on the cusp of revelation and tension. The transformative moment awaited, ripe with promise and fear intertwined, but it was his next words that would decide everything. Jack took a deep breath, his mind racing as he approached the man. The questions spiraled like a cyclone, and yet, there was a flicker of determination igniting within him. The decision to cross that threshold into vulnerability felt monumental. Would he crumble under the weight of self-doubt or rise to embrace the uncomfortable truth that awaited him? "Hello," Jack said, his voice slightly unsteady but layered with sincerity. "Thank you for coming." The man met his gaze, and for a moment, they stood in silence, an electric tingle of shared history pulsing between them. "I've been looking," the man finally replied, his voice low but firm, "at what you've made of my story." There was no resentment in his tone, only a deep well of curiosity. Jack's pulse quickened. I hope it does justice to your truth," he managed, eyes searching for hints of approval or disappointment. The man chuckled softly, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as if the walls surrounding them melted into an understanding neither had anticipated. "Truth can be tricky, but it's yours to tell. I just hope it opens some eyes." The sincerity of his words struck Jack with unexpected force. Open some eyes. That was the essence of his work, wasn't it? Every stroke on the canvas, every captured moment had been an attempt to peel back the layers of societal misconception. "Can we talk?" Jack asked, feeling an overwhelming impulse to share more, to articulate the gravity he had tried to convey in his pieces. "Yes," the man replied. They found a quieter corner in the bustling gallery, a small oasis among the noise. Jack felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. "Did my painting feel right to you?" Did it capture your experience? Jack inquired, his eyes searching for the man's reaction. The homeless man considered this, his brow furrowed as if dissecting the very essence of his being. Felt like a piece of my soul was there, like you were holding my truth, but maybe that truth wasn't just mine anymore. You've shared it with people who've never seen the world like we do. Jack felt a swell of pride and fear simultaneously. His interpretation had transcended mere representation. It had become a bridge. He was offering a perspective that could inspire change, that could illuminate disparaging realities to those who lived obliviously. What about your story spoke most powerfully to you? Jack pressed, eager to deepen this connection. Survival, the man said, eyes closing momentarily, as if he was reliving the moments Jack had tried to encapsulate. I wanted people to see that survival is more than just existence. It's about hope, resilience, and the dreams that get lost along the way. Jack's heart raced. Survival, resilience. Those were not just themes in his work. They were profound illustrations of the human experience. And here you are, inspiring those who may not understand that. The man opened his eyes, fixed on Jack. And you're doing the same, my friend. But it's not just about what I think. What do you think? Can you grow from this too? Jack leaned back, grappling with the question that pierced to the heart of his artistic journey. Could he? Was the act of sharing, of risking himself for the sake of another's truth, finally carving out a space for his own growth? As the thoughts settled in, his chest constricted with a mix of excitement and anxiety, illuminating the truth. He was evolving. In that moment, he realized he had been the protagonist of his own journey, but now he was sharing the spotlight. He was no longer merely lifting others' stories to the canvas. He was becoming a part of them. Jack's new commitment resonated within him. The gathering crowd buzzed around him, but he felt anchored in this newfound revelation. Here, standing before the man whose story had spearheaded his artistic journey, he recognized an opportunity to embrace transformation not just for himself, but also for the vision he carried forward. I want to continue this dialogue, he said, words surging from a place of genuine intent. How do we turn this moment into action? Where can I go from here? As the man smiled, Jack sensed the questions coursing through the air like threads binding their destinies together. Each inquiry carried weight, and the answer loomed just beyond grasp. The man leaned in closer. The time has come to face the consequences of that conversation. Jack steeled himself. What would that mean for his art? For his journey? For the stories yet to be told? Whatever awaited him next was shrouded in uncertainty. But he understood one thing clearly. The path ahead would require navigating the very truths he sought to expose. Was he ready to face the ripple effects of his decisions? As a surge of anticipation pulsed through him, Jack couldn't help but wonder just how profound that growing transformation could become. The man's words hung in the air, a clarion call echoing the complexities of Jack's evolving journey. Yet, just as the encouragement swelled within him, a wave of apprehension washed over Jack. The thought of consequences, of facing not just his own narrative but the potential backlash from those who misunderstood his intentions, sent a shiver down his spine. He was venturing into uncharted territory, where the line between advocacy and exploitation was razor-thin. Determined, he leaned closer to the man, searching his eyes for guidance. What do you mean by consequences? Jack's voice was firm, but a tremor lingered, a remnant of his uncertainty. The man regarded Jack thoughtfully. To truly share our stories is to invite scrutiny, maybe even pushback. Your work has power, use it wisely. Are you prepared to navigate the conflicts that will arise? Not everyone wants their comfort challenged. Jack swallowed hard, realizing the depth of the man's insight. This wasn't merely about painting truths. It was about catalyzing dialogue, igniting discomfort, and perhaps even facing hostility from those who preferred to remain uninformed. As they spoke, Jack's mind raced with the possibilities. His current exhibition, while celebrated for its artistic merit, was a risky platform for the underlying messages he wished to amplify. He could not shy away from revealing the harsh realities that lived outside the polished galleries of the art community. Will you stand with me? Jack asked suddenly, the words spilling out before he could contain them. An unwavering conviction ignited in him. If they were to embark on a journey filled with potential repercussions, he didn't want to do it alone. The man's eyes softened, and a hint of a smile crept across his face. You've already begun. But remember, standing resilient amidst challenge requires introspection. Your resolve will be tested far beyond this gallery. I'm ready, Jack insisted, yet doubt flickered at the edges of his affirmation. Was he truly prepared to face those who would resist or condemn his intentions? Was his ability to provoke thought worth the risk of alienating some of his audience? Then let us channel that resolve, the man said, his voice steady. The stories you create can spark change. They can resonate in places you've never imagined. But first, seek to understand your own connection to this truth. Dig deep. What does it mean for you personally? How can you contribute beyond the canvas? Letting the words penetrate deeply, Jack felt a knot of realization tighten in his stomach. His journey thus far had often been surface level, a quest for artistic achievement. Now, it was imperative to peel back the layers of his authenticity and acknowledge not just the stories he wanted to portray but the narratives he held within himself. There's a burden in art, he murmured, more to himself than the man. Can feel sweet to hide behind beauty, to avoid confronting my own influence. But I see now that I must confront what I truly wish to say. The man regarded him with a look of approval, sensing the shift within Jack. Good. Use that burden. You have more stories than you realize. Seek them out, refine them, and let them shape your truth. Only then can your art serve both you and those you intend to uplift. Jack breathed deeply. As conviction began to take root, the artist in him longed to connect with the truth he sought. He understood that this journey was not a solitary endeavor. Each story would blur the lines between creator and critiqued. But was he willing to let that connection expose his vulnerabilities? In that moment, Jack resolved to meet the challenges ahead. He would dissect the layers of his own existence, confront societal misconceptions, and embrace the unknown consequences of his artistic truth. But as he looked into the man's knowing eyes, a shadow of doubt flickered again. Was his resolve truly enough? Or would the fears lurking beneath this new commitment surface to sabotage his efforts? As Jack contemplated the formidable path before him, he felt an unmistakable tension building within his gut. His next steps would require not just courage but unwavering clarity of purpose. Only time would reveal the true extent of his transformation. What stories awaited him in that unraveling journey? And would he be able to balance the weight of truth with the fragility of perception? The intricacies of his next choice loomed larger than ever, demanding full engagement with the world he sought to illuminate. Jack stood at the edge of a transformative moment, a stark contrast to the broken man he once was on Michigan Avenue. The exhibition he'd envisioned was no longer a mere showcase of art. It had morphed into a representation of resilience, struggle, and the interconnectedness of the human experience. Standing before the gathered crowd, the weight of his responsibility settled on his shoulders, yet clarity pierced through the noise of his earlier doubts. His words flowed effortlessly, resonating with the vulnerability he had nurtured within himself. Art is not just a reflection of the artist. It is a tapestry woven from the threads of our collective stories, Jack proclaimed, his voice ringing with conviction. He shared tales not only of his journey from despair to rediscovery, but also of the countless individuals whose narratives enriched his work. Each stroke of his pencil, each splash of color, was infused with the hope that their truth would spark connection among those who witnessed it. As he locked eyes with the homeless man who inspired so much of his latest collection, he felt a sense of validation. They were bound by an intricate web of shared experiences. This man's laughter resonated in the gallery, a sound of acceptance. Jack knew he had honored the essence of his stories. This validation morphed into a powerful momentum, propelling him forward. The artist and subject transformed into allies, advocates of change. With every interaction during the exhibition, Jack bore witness to the ripple effect of his honesty. Those who admired his art went beyond its aesthetic appeal. They were moved by the tales behind the textures. Conversations flourished as guests engaged with the weighty messages hidden within the layers. He answered questions with an openness he never thought possible, revealing not only the intent behind his creations but also his vulnerabilities. "Why do you think your story matters?" a curious young artist asked, her eyes wide with fascination. "Because it's not just my story," Jack responded, finding comfort in his own authenticity. "It's a reminder that we all possess narratives threaded with complexity. When shared, they can illuminate darkness, inspiring others to rise and reclaim their own truths." The crowd nodded, and he felt a wave of camaraderie wash over the gallery. Their enthusiastic reactions buoyed him. They didn't merely see him as Jack the architect turned artist, but as a testament to growth, resilience, and the power of vulnerability. He had achieved what he never dreamed possible: to create art that not only reflected his journey but also resonated within others. As the night concluded, Jack left the gallery feeling lighter, buoyed by a newfound confidence. People offered praises, each acknowledgement stroking away remnants of self-doubt. He had proven to himself and others that he was not merely a failed artist but a vehicle for shared experience and empathy. His sketches spoke volumes about humanity, a reflection not just of him, but of everyone who breathed life into his work. Months blurred by as Jack embarked on a path of collaborative storytelling, delving into narratives shaped by people from all walks of life. He hosted workshops, inviting others to share their stories, while he captured their essences through sketches. Each journey brought him deeper into the regions of vulnerability that once paralyzed him. He was now eulogizing not only his struggles but celebrating the triumphs of those he had come to know. Recognition poured in. Local media showcased his innovative projects and his exhibitions gained traction. The man he had once met on the street became a regular in Jack's life, attending every event and participating in new art collaborations. Together, they shared the power of their stories, compelling others to confront their own. Jack's sense of achievement crystallized in moments like these. No longer did fear loom like a specter. Rather, he embodied confidence, firmly positioned as a respected artist advocating for authenticity through art. He had transformed not just himself but also his community's perspective. What began as a struggle to recapture past glories morphed into a calling to dig deeper, to inspire connection and foster a shared understanding of resilience and hope. And with each passing day, his commitment grew clearer. He was not just an architect of buildings but an architect of lives, helping others reclaim their narratives through art. As Jack looked across the city he once felt detached from, he noticed the skyline shimmering under the vibrant light, a beautiful acknowledgement of all he had conquered. It was time to discover what lay ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support now. Don't wait even one more second.